Gentlemen, welcome to another episode of True Sight, the place to go for all of your Dota news, memes, and of course, color-coordinated hosts.
Oh God, we weren't going to say it out loud.
We didn't want to acknowledge it, but I figured let's just tear the Band-Aid off, get rid of the elephant in the room.
You got to rip that Band-Aid off
And
soon, buddy.
so obviously it's impossible to tell Lee and I apart right now with our matching shirts. So let me just explain. I'm Ian on the I believe
I'm
it's
trying
the
not to
right
make
of
a
your
black
screen.
joke. I'm trying my hardest right now, but I can't.
You do.
I
Don't fight
That
it.
was it. I'm just going to let it go.
With me, of course, is none other than Lee Malice Massey.
Hey,
Lee, welcome for the second week in a row.
Okay, this is my job. I was gone for a while. If you don't know me, then you do now.
It's well, the story we had going around is that you were actually waiting to respawn because your ward didn't play. Your support didn't place a ward, and you were ganked while you were farming.
Ganked, so I was dead for a while.
That's true.
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
right.
But it wasn't a long time because it was early game.
I like that. That's not bad. I was just saying I was saving orphans for 7 days in a row on the streets of Zimbabwe.
It's up to you to decide which one is true. Well, we got a great show for you tonight. We originally had planned, I need to address this early, we originally planned to have Coddle Guy on the show. Sadly, Dakota is doing family things, and he is quite busy tonight, and we forgive him for that, at least for now. And
So for the next few weeks, we're going to call him Dakota Fanning. He's earned
I'm
that.
sorry, man. You wrote your own check there. But so what we're going to do is Lee and I are going to talk a little bit about our breakdown of 6.86, the sort of post-mortem, if you will, and what we'd like to see from 6.87 moving into the Manila Major. Then after that, we've got the big ticket item. We've got a little interview with Zai, who spoke to us earlier this week. Just a little teeny tiny interview with the Swedish Crystal Maiden himself.
Swedish Crystal Maiden.
And he'll be here to talk about his return to the competitive scene, the teams that he's looking at, and what it's been like to take some time off of Dota. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the patch that will not die. The patch that effectively killed the mid lane for every self-respecting mid player.
Yeah, well, it didn't kill it.
And
Made it difficult.
Turned Spectre into the unassailable pub carry that you know and fear. Patch 6.86. For those of you who have been living under a Dota rock for a little while, you won't be familiar with the fact that 6.86 did sort of reach a fever pitch at the most recent major. Secret and Liquid both played a rather, I'd say, a fairly similar strategy. There's a lot of focus on pushing, less on winning team fights or making engagements, and more just on capitalizing on winning those engagements, usually with the Forged Spirits from Invoker and the Treants from Nature's Prophet. I'm looking at you, Misery. Give us your thoughts, Lee. Without 6.87 being as mature as it's going to get, what's your take on the state of things?
I'm just going to say one thing and one thing only. Invoker needs to be removed from the game. That's it. I mean, I like the feeling that this current patch just makes it feel like there's a lot of viable things, but then again, there's so many viable strategies, but then again, there's this one wrench in the works that can mess it up. And it's usually Invoker. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like in almost every single match that we've either seen Invoker played or banned. It's like an almost 100% pick or ban rate on him.
Yeah, it's certainly a case of there are a lot of strategies that can work, but there's really just one or two strategies that do work.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw EG play a rather unique strategy, especially for this meta in Shanghai, where they went with this sort of single core heavy engagement and aggression, sort of the pick and pop, I believe is what Toffee's called it last time.
I like it. Good job, Toffees.
You go stealth into the jungle with Nyx, you find somebody, you nuke them down, and then Sven's hammer cleaves through the minion line.
Yeah, Sven was another thing I was going to pull up because, I mean, hey, RTZ. But no, Sven, I love Sven, and I feel like in this meta, Sven and Ursa, I put the two together because both of them kind of they grow and they really feed off of the gameplay where it's the never-ending fight that we see in the
they're momentum-based heroes.
Exactly. I mean, Ursa, he just hits you and he keeps hitting you and it gets worse and worse and worse, like the tax season. But then Sven hits you and it's just like, okay, is it almost over? Is it okay? No, it's not over
Nope,
yet.
he's still going.
But I like these heroes because they just burn you and they keep hitting you over and over. And I feel like easily kited is the one word that, the one thing that brings it to mind, except for Nature's Prophet. I mean, there's so many things in mind with different heroes and in this meta how we see them played.
Yeah. And before we get to the actual statistics on 6.86, I do have to say, I think the problem for heroes like Ursa and Sven, who obviously showed that they were extremely powerful in the right hands, Sven gets one crit after he gets a bit of an item lead, and your entire team is pretty much gone.
Yeah, because cleave damage. Well, it's almost as well. And then we see PA. It's really interesting to look at the Shanghai Major. Wasn't PA played once?
Maybe once.
One time. And I remember I was having a conversation with Ahaz on Twitter, and it was me and Ahaz. We were saying, no, this is going to be great because have you seen Misery play? I think it was Misery.
I believe it was QO, actually.
QO, okay. Never mind. It was QO on PA. And I remember everyone was saying, QO, look at his PA play. He's done great in the past. He's done great in the past. And I remember 5 minutes later, we're just like, this is not how this should have gone down at all.
I mean, if you get Invoker and Nature's Prophet, which was completely viable for a lot of people because you had to waste a ban on Earth Spirit, so you couldn't possibly get rid of both of them. So either one or the other, assuming you didn't have first pick, was going to fall into your opponent's hands in a professional setting. You have Cold Snap, you have Ghost Walk to get away and sort of delay, for example, the initial Earth Shock from Ursa, his buff of attacks. You had, oh my God, why can't I think of it? Sprout. Hey, Arteezy.
Sprout. Hey, Arteezy. I like how we're going to do this.
Sprout alone could stop a melee carry in its tracks, and it didn't seem like there was anything you could do. I mean, it was incredible that if you had a Quelling Blade...
It's not even there. It doesn't exist.
But nobody is going to keep a Quelling Blade in their inventory
but
for
somebody's
that long.
learned. Always keep the Quelling Blade. It doesn't matter. You have to decide between BKB and that Quelling Blade. Keep the Quelling Blade, brother. That's all you need.
Absolutely. Now we've got, I want to go ahead and take a look at the win rates for these heroes. We've got a very highly advanced technological screen capture of my Google Chrome browser. If we could go ahead and pull that up for our technical director. We've got a lot of heroes, and a lot of these stats are coming from pubs. It has to be said.
It's Dota Buff pubs.
Dota Buff pubs, and that has to be, there has to be a distinction made about that, because while the professional scene gives us one look at what patch point 687 was, pubs give us a very different one. For example, we may be having trouble getting it up on the screen, but we see that Omni Knight and Spectre both have close to a 60% win rate.
Well, it's Omni Knight and Spectre. Spectre and Anti-Mage are the two heroes that I will always say, okay, let's put this down in perspective. Spectre, after minute 30, 35, it's going to be very difficult to kill that Spectre. Anti-Mage is on the same level. But the funny thing is that what probably brings that win rate so far low is those people that just installed Dota and they see some Havost old school players on Anti-Mage or something. They're like, oh, I can totally do that. Easily. I understand this. And then at the minute one, they're just like, why am I not killing things? And why is this Blink not working?
As it turns out, he's a much harder hero to play than that. And I think that it has to be said that part of the reason that Spectre sort of took over and Anti-Mage didn't is because of Spectre's ability to nuke down the really high impact supports. You give somebody some time to farm, they're going to get a Radiance, and suddenly next thing you know, you pop Haunt and your heroes are literally melted. I
love that so much.
I played a game of Spectre where I carried pretty hard, and I had a Radiance, and they had a couple of squishy supports. And the best part was, I popped. I'm like, Radiance is online. They're grouping up in the middle. Let's pop Haunt and let's team fight. And I chased down the cores. And I didn't really think about it. Right? I popped Haunt. I let it sit there for a couple seconds to get some burn damage, and then I haunted in on top of their squishier carry, and I took him out. And then when the fight was over, I had an ultra kill.
Oh.
I hadn't touched the supports. It was literally just
burn
the Radiance burn for all those illusions next to each other just completely melted them before they even got into the fight.
One of the things that I will say about Spectre is I love Spectre. Recently, I've decided to start playing her a lot more often. And instead of going straight for Radiance, I've started going for a Diffusal Blade a little earlier.
Really?
Because if you go straight for the Diffusal Blade, because you haunt.
Did you say the Diffusal Blade?
Diffusal Blade.
Am I talking to Dylan?
Dylan. Okay, no. What are you going to call it? Diffusal Blade? It's diffuse.
It's diffuse. Like you diffuse.
Whatever.
Anyway.
Semantics. Tomato, Diffusal Blade, diffuse.
Proper pronunciation. Wrong pronunciation.
Sorry,
Anyway, you go for what makes you go for the Diffusal Blade first?
Because you can haunt onto one of your illusions, and whichever one is running away and has the least amount of health, you can just diffuse them. Diffuse. God, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to say it anymore. You D them.
Send
you
your complaints to @malice
No,
TV
don't
on Twitter.
Ever. But
No, I see what you're saying. It's much more because the problem with Spectre in the past has always been that it takes a long time for her to get going.
Yeah.
And so if you can get the momentum rolling yourself with the Diffusal Blade, pick up those solo kills that Spectre's known for, that puts the Radiance online a lot sooner.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I
no.
go for Diffusal, whatever. We're just gonna
Welcome back to the
Output.
show, good buddy. It's actually working. At
It
our
is?
technical,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just hoping it was because I was told to tell you.
computers.
Hey, everybody.
I should be outputting, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually not. Looks like
Oh, cha-ching!
looks like the fools is me. So looking at this chart, which is now being outputs our tech. There we go. Look at that. This is how a professional studio runs. We've got Omni Knight, Spectre, Necrophos, Abaddon, and Zeus are your top 5
You
pub
just can't
heroes.
kill him. Abaddon. I am so
cannot.
happy he's in the top 5. So happy. He is my buddy. I've known the guy for a long time. He's got a great personality and shit. Loves chips
You're
and dip.
looking at
Anyway.
live visual production.
Abaddon is so amazing because, like, if you put him in the off lane against somebody else's carry and they've got, like, oh, okay, cool, you just put CM or Witch Doctor and, like, CM Witch Doctor and whatever hard carry, whichever spice of life you decide to go for today. And then Abaddon's there with some other durable, brutal hero like Wraith King. Oh, my God. Unless you're ranged and can just, like...
You're never going to kill him. And the Curse of Avernus buff or debuff, I guess you could say, that he puts on towers, heroes, anything. If you watch closely, you can actually watch. If you watch your creeps, if you watch your friendly heroes, you can watch as you hit the tower once, and suddenly it's like everybody is on steroids, just chucking auto attacks at the towers, and it's nice to see him functioning as he is. It's actually sort of interesting to me that he wasn't chosen more often professionally, just because of, like you said, the durability that he gives. And in a patch where snowballing is such a big issue, Abaddon can kind of turn the tide either in your favor, in a defensive capacity or in an offensive capacity. Offensively because of the Curse of Avernus, defensively because if you put the Aphotic Shield on somebody, obviously a gank becomes much more difficult, and hell, maybe you take someone down with you when the shield pops.
I would actually have to disagree with you because on the as a pub player playing Abaddon all the time, I love him to death. He's an amazing player. But in higher level play, I've seen some of my friends pull out the Abaddon, and I just see them get wrecked. It's because honestly, he doesn't scale with the damage as well as you'd expect him to. And I mean, he's an enabler. He is the Dota enabler. He is the guy that, like, he hits them and they're slowed. He buffs his friends. It's amazing, and he's great for that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But he's not bringing so much to the fight. And the moment he gets, like, bursted down and then he goes into borrowed time and then he's dead, he doesn't bring anything to the fight.
That's
so
true.
great. You brought a slight buff to the party, but then you died too early. He's like the person that just started drinking, and it's like 2 a.m. He's asleep. Everybody else is just like, what the hell's wrong with that guy? Abaddon.
Somebody get Steve a cab.
Somebody get Abaddon a cab.
And when you look at the other supports that did really well, Crystal Maiden was doing well, obviously. Lion is another one that made a big difference. These are both heroes that have great engage potential.
Yeah.
Abaddon's engagement in the support role, at least, is really just, if I can get close enough to them to put Curse of Avernus on one person, I guess we all run faster into the fight. So in that way, I do understand what you're saying. Zeus, sort of surprising to see on the pub list, top 5, except maybe for the couple times that I popped a random Zeus ult and caught somebody jungling.
You can catch them, like Legion Commander's not paying attention. But I mean, okay, so let's look at the patch as it is right now.
Sure.
What was changed in between, like, the last 2 patches, and what makes these heroes so viable nowadays? Like, let's look at the pro scene. We're seeing Invoker in every single game. Sure. All-World Devourer.
All over the place.
I can't
certainly.
say that word right now. It starts with okay, so OD is just ridiculous right now, and I'm loving the change, the slight change, so that intelligence is stolen on every hit. Oh my God, it feels like Slark, because Slark, once he gets 10 hits on somebody, you're no longer like, hey, we can take out that Slark. We're now just like, hey, let's avoid that guy. Let's just run, because OD, he gets 5 hits on you. Now he's stolen so much intelligence, he's smarter than you are, and he's just gonna beat you down. It's amazing.
Well, and that's really the question, right? And I'm actually having sort of a hard time nailing that down. Is what changed the mid lane so drastically? Because I feel that this isn't a story of one or two heroes being nerfed or one or two heroes being buffed. It's about the complete change of the function of the mid lane. Because for the longest time, the mid lane was a lane that you played in Dota.
You play it to 6, and then you rotate, try to get a gank, and then the game goes on.
Now it feels a lot more like, dare I say, a League of Legends mid, where you're both sort of slapping at each other, you try a couple ganks, but ultimately both of you are going to probably turn into scary late game monsters, right? It's another carry position. And I think that a big part of that has to do with Iron Talon. Because with Iron Talon enabling offlaners to suddenly get a great deal of farm without having to contest a tri-lane or something like that, it allows them a lot of farm potential later in the game. It sort of becomes an arms race. So at the end of the day, if you aren't picking the hero in the mid lane with the most right-click damage, then when the late game comes, you're simply not going to have the damage to take people down.
Now, I feel like I agree with you on most of those points, but the one thing I would say I differ with you. Words today.
You differ with me.
I defer with you. But the one thing I would say I don't agree with you fully on is the fact that right-click damage on your hero. Now, let's look at all of the heroes. Like, who do you think does the most base right-click damage? Now, dare I say Phantom Assassin, because that 15% crit damage for 400% damage is redonk. But with that on there, like, are you going to put PA mid? Now, unless you've got literally Weeha or some other amazing person, not you, Eternal Envy, I love you, but just don't do it anymore. Sure. Like, unless you put somebody that's amazing on it and knows exactly what they're doing with this hero, and you put them mid, right-click damage per se isn't the best thing to put at mid. Maybe we should put something like, I don't know, Outworld Devourer, or, God, I can't say it right now. But I don't know. What do you think?
And Outworld Devourer also has the Astral Imprisonment, which allows him to escape those more heinous ganks. We saw EG try to push the mid lane in their favor when Sumail was struggling with the current pool of heroes by firing Mirana arrows into the middle, by drafting Earth Spirit and getting the big kicks into the middle to try to turn their lane in their favor. But ultimately, they were sort of playing a game that doesn't exist in this patch. You're not trying to win the mid lane. You're trying to go even in the mid lane long enough that either your Invoker pick or your OD pick, believe me, you got either one or the other, makes it into the late game with some decent damage items.
I'm curious about what we're going to see in the next patch.
That's actually a great segue.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like, looking forward, so there's certain things that every patch brings that we all expect to happen. Sure. Because, I mean, during 6.83, during the end of that, we were all just like, we know exactly who's getting nerfed. Troll and Sniper. Yeah. There's no way it's going to happen where it's like they're not getting nerfed. So looking forward, I can expect a slight rework on OD, and something is going to change on Invoker. Because I feel like right now, Invoker's an amazing hero. The idea and the lore behind him is beautiful because like it gives you this one hero that has so many options for how they're gonna fuck you up,
provided you have the skill, right?
Yeah, piano player, as we've said so many times on the show. We've coined that. That's a true site phrase, baby. Piano player. If you play Invoker so well that you just evoke this maturity that makes everyone scared of you as soon as you ghost walk into the party. It's kind of weird how that's gonna have to change coming up very soon.
Because somehow this hero with an extremely high skill ceiling, you could say this hero is only good if you're a piano, or this player is only unstoppable if you're a piano player. Well, there's so many good Invoker players in the meta right now that happens.
If you're gonna learn it on a patch, I would say learn Invoker on this patch. Just forget him as soon as the next patch comes out, because we can expect the ban or the nerf hammer somewhere. But okay, so who else are we expecting some major changes on? Like, what do you think?
I think the real because in the history of Dota 2, we've seen a lot more buffs than nerfs. They prefer to bring everybody else up to the top hero or to the strong heroes level than nerf. But I think that one thing that does need to be nerfed, and it's not a hero, it's an item, and that's Iron Talon. Because the simple fact is
40% damage.
It does a lot of damage, and it makes jungling a little bit too easy. Because I actually saw a Reddit post recently that I bravely
look at you on Reddit and
upvoted. I know that said that basically the problem with the Iron Talon is it convinces newer players that jungle is a viable role. Well, here's the thing: Dota's never been a game that said you should always have a jungler. And the reason for that is because by having a jungler, you're sacrificing early game tempo.
It spreads.
You're rotating it's almost always a support. You're rotating a support out of the lane where they need to protect a more fragile carry. But with Iron Talon, it speeds up farming. It gives a lot more heroes the opportunity to jungle, and suddenly you're walking these position 4 monsters out of the jungle, and you're getting earlier initiations. Well, you could say that certainly encourages more team fighting and encourages a more eventful mid and late game. I would have to disagree and say that I think all it does is it forces everybody to play safer. Because you don't have that extra man rotating in on ganks in the mid lane. They're able to play more damage dealing guys. Nerf Iron Talon for president. Make Dota great again. 2016.
No, don't. Okay, I'm going to give you the dissenting opinion on this. I think that Iron Talon is an amazing item, and I like the fact that it speeds up. I'm disagreeing. It's an amazing item that speeds up jungling. Now the thing is that like Dota, we've seen the match times fall in the past few patches. We've gone from like regularly 40-minute matches, and now people aren't afraid of playing so much Dota because you're like, oh, I've got a 25-minute match coming up because somebody's going to get stomped. That's how it works. But the beautiful thing is the fact that like now that we've got everyone getting stronger faster, Iron Talon lets the people that are in the jungle, and I'm just going to put this out there a long time ago, a good guy who knows a lot about Dota named Nahaz said jungling should not be a position in Dota right now because you have so much experience in gold coming from the lanes and whatnot. 9 times out of 10, if I'm in a match and Legion Commander's just like, I got jungle guys, I'm just like, no, you don't, get in lane.
I've yet to win a single game. I tried it once. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it, and I apologized to my teammates afterwards. And then I've had it done. I've been a victim of jungle Legion Commander like 5 or 6 times, and I've not won a single. We haven't even come close to winning a single one.
It's always not enough experience in gold coming in. I mean, I played a Legion Commander match a couple days ago, and it was beautiful because the thing is that like I kind of clicked. I love Legion Commander. Her kit is beautiful, and the thing I've realized is if you put her safe lane and you just like baby the hell out of her, and you're just like, no, you stay there. Here's your bib, and you feed. Like you eat, not feed.
Not feed.
Like you just grow into this unstoppable force who just shows up out of nowhere, blinks, duels, wins.
Yeah,
gone.
Blink, blade mail, duel. Gone. Yeah,
it's beautiful. But the thing,
I think I agree with you because it is in the sense that Iron Talon's a great item, and I think it's a welcome addition to Dota, and especially with the offlane getting that extra creep camp. I think it's an important thing to enabling offlaners a place in the game. I mean, for the longest time, we watched Universe sort of scrimp and save for whatever he could get, throwing ion shells on it. I mean, hell, that's half the reason you could play Darkseer back when things were really aggressive in the offlane, is because you could throw on the ion shell ion shell and farm remotely. That's the only reason. But now we've got the creep camp there. All I'm saying is increase the cooldown on Iron Talon significantly.
Okay, I can see that actually.
Make it easier. Give stats to the offlaner. Give them a tool to farm the creep camp quickly and then get them back into lane. Do not make it a tool for ubiquitous jungling on any hero under the sun. It's one thing to stick a Beastmaster on with his boar in the jungle, and so he sort of kites and micros the camps in order to farm them. It's another thing to give Legion Commander 40% damage on a minion so that she just cleaves through the waves and then goes into lane and die. I just think it's better for the game of Dota if we increase the cooldown on Iron Talon.
So you think we're going to get like item buffs and whatnot? I would like him to add some more buffs. I mean, items. I would like him to add some more items, because items, the past few patches, we've gotten quite a few new ones. I mean, Aetherlands has changed Pudges forever. I mean, I like how...
Yeah, it sure has.
I'm so sorry. I don't play Pudge very often, but when I do, it's a feed fest. Holy shit. I don't know. I mean, new items would be great. I think one of the more interesting things that we can expect to see is probably some more, like Dragonlance, Aetherlands, increase the range. Probably some cooldowns, Octarine Core is just too damn expensive for a small amount of
the price
cooldown.
of Octarine Core is too damn high.
Too damn high. I love the item. It's amazing. And once I build it on a Death Prophet or so, then you're amazing. Now, I think we should probably take the cooldown reduction that is on Octarine Core, put it on a cheaper item, and then make Octarine Core's cooldown reduction a bit bigger, or make it in a recipe, or make it an item that builds into Octarine Core. That's just my personal opinion.
I would like to see item buffs. I think the hard part is going to be balancing those item buffs again, or those new items. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking for new items. Let me clarify this first. I think you need something to help deal with split pushing. Something like, something that you use it once, sort of like Ravenous Hydra in League of Legends. I'm sorry, League of Legends people, if I got that wrong. I don't care. Ravenous Hydra, which has sort of like an AoE thing that you can only use every once in a while to sort of help soften the wave. I mean, when you've got Aghanim Scepter Treants, because they killed a bunch of minions and then marched them plus their Sprout Treants down a lane, it's too much. So either you need, and that's the problem, right? So like, let's say we do create this item that stops split pushing a little bit, helps maybe insta-gib a Forge Spirit or something like that, something that helps knock out the treants earlier. That becomes a jungle item.
It does.
And obviously the problem right now is not that we have too little jungling in Dota, but maybe just a bit too much. So my thought is, instead of giving us new items, let's keep the same items and let's balance a few of these heroes, notably OD, Invoker, and Nature's Prophet specifically.
Oh, no, not Nature's Prophet.
Yes,
I need that guy. I love him so much. I can't. I'm sorry. I can win a match solo as him. Holy crap.
That's the problem.
That's not the problem. That is a feature. See, Dota is a whole game where it's just like, if everything is so unbalanced, there's some semblance of balance, then it works.
And while we're not nerfing Furion, let's just buff cliff jungling too. What other kind of poisonous things can we buff in this new patch?
It's not poison.
Tell me more. Okay.
It's blatantly making the game better.
One man's opinion. I'm just saying, nerf Furion, maybe take away some of the HP of the trees, or at least we'll put it this way: give the trees a little bit more damage to towers.
Oh my God, yes!
And that way you can't just have them soak up all of the tower hits while the rest of the creep. I mean, it's sort of like the zombies for Undying's Tombstone, right? I mean, they hit you, they slow you, and they're a nuisance, but they're one tower shot to kill. I think that's a great way to balance.
They're one shot at all to kill.
Well, sure,
Yeah.
okay. So and I don't think that treants necessarily need to be one shot from heroes. I think that would pretty much destroy Furion, because especially if you've got a Battle Fury, or if you've got Sven's Cleave, then suddenly it's like you pop all these treants, he pops in and whacks it once, and they're all gone. I'm just saying, nerf them.
Then we'd see Sven in a lot more games. We would see him as a direct counter.
We would also see Furion in a lot less games.
No, I would love to,
which would not be a bad thing.
Yeah, no,
so just to sum up our wish list, you want to see new items,
I
want to see Furion deleted from the game. I think this has been a very productive.
No,
OS Frog, please get us patch 6.87.
Bulldog has a lot to say.
My question is, what do you guys think? Go ahead and tweet at us at .esports and let us know the revisions that you'd like made to see in patch 6.87. We'll check out some of those on the show next week, and we'll have a big discussion, a big chips and dips party waiting for 6.87 to come out and make all of our Dota wishes come true.
Are we saying it's coming out soon?
We don't know, but we do know that we want to talk about it. We do know that we want to talk about it. Anyway, moving on to our next segment, we've got a very talented young lady by the name of Tiffany, who, I don't know about you, but has taught me a lot about team fighting. She's about to teach you a little bit about team fighting, specifically when to re-engage, when buybacks aren't a bad thing, and the importance of vision.
Hello everybody, I'm Tiffany, and welcome to Tiffany Teaches Team Fights. This week, we return once again to the Captain's Draft 3.0 tournament, but this time with Evil Geniuses versus Vega Squadron Game 4. EG take on Vega in a super long series of engagements that starts in the bot lane and ends mid with a 7-for-7 trade with a buyback and a tier 1 tower? Let's just fast forward through most of this and look at this last engagement here in the mid lane. All you missed was both EG and Vega losing 3, and Sumail dying as well. And then Arteezy once again. Alright, here, nearly everyone has respawned, but there's no rest for the wicked as EG immediately group up to re-engage once again. Barely a pause, just enough for the Ember to return to mid lane, and Sumail jumps in on the Enchantress. A life-saving stolen purification on the Enchantress later, and the Ember is in a lot of trouble as both he and the Bane get caught by a Burrow Strike. Vega close in, and with the fissure, general AoE, and impetus, The Ember and Bane get finished off quickly. But alas, the field has been freezing as the Crystal Maiden ult slowly removes health and then Enchantress and Spectre from Vega before being interrupted. Sumail buys back almost immediately, Chaos Knight respawns, and even a nice Burrow Strike catch into Sandstorm can't save the Sand King thanks to a quick sentry ward. Earthshaker tries to run, but a fissure can't stop the Ember, and Earthshaker is deleted. In this engagement, EG take 4 and the Tier 1 tower mid for 2 and a buyback. So what were the keys to success? Well, for one, vision. EG have a lot of aggressive vision on the Radiant side of the river, right around the Tier 1 tower, which allowed them to see Vega was still there and re-engage immediately. Not to mention the sentry placed to finish off the Sand King. A buyback this early was a little strange, but with Sumail ultimately catching the Earthshaker and EG taking the Tier 1 mid, it ends up being a worthwhile trade. So, lessons. Vision is very important. Re-engage, especially if you can catch the other team off guard. Take objectives to capitalize on kills. And remember that the Crystal Maiden ult does actually hurt. A lot. This has been Tiffany Teaches Teamfights. Back to you at the desk.
Thank you once again, Tiffany, for another lovely explanation. Now,
Yeah.
of course, you see two of us here, but sadly, in just a few moments, you'll only see one of us here. We spoke to Zai earlier this week. Unfortunately, could not be here with us live tonight, but we took the liberty of discussing some big issues with the not retired, we'll call him dormant, former star player of Sad Boys, Evil Geniuses, and Team Secret. As I met with us earlier this week to talk about his time at school, achieving his dream of graduating high school. Well, maybe not his dream, his goal, the 2016 goal of graduating from high school, his impending return to the professional scene, and of course, which teams want his services after the international. Thank you, guys. I have with me a very special guest tonight, an individual who has been away from the pro scene for a little bit while he finishes up school. Stay in school, kids. None other than Ludwig Zai Wahlberg, coming to us from Sweden, well known for his play on two of the greatest Western Dota lineups in the past 2 years, beginning his career with Sad Boys in the support role, actually, and then moving to the offlane with Team Secret, and experiencing a dominant run on both of them, which is why it's so significant that a player of his caliber would take a step away, and he's here to join us tonight. Zai, how are you doing this evening?
I could be better. I just got off my study session. I was doing French, which is not that fun. So I could be better. Yeah.
It's easy. I've found that French is easier than English.
I mean, it's okay. It's just not that exciting.
Just the things you need to get done with. Now, we spoke a little bit before, but just for the fans at home, you're finishing up high school, correct?
Yeah, I guess senior year, if you transfer it to English terms.
Is there a European term for it? Is it not senior year over there?
It's my third year. It's my final year.
Okay.
So I guess that's it.
Well, there you go. Well, now one of the interesting things, of course, about you finishing up your third year, your senior year, however you like to call it, is that unlike a lot of your classmates, you have sort of a set up career ahead of you. Talk to us a little bit about that. Are you planning, Zai, officially here on TrueSight, are you planning on coming back to professional Dota?
I am planning that, definitely. It's been the long-term goal ever since I decided to step down for playing after, TI5? Yeah. It was kind of my goal to just get school out of the way and do it properly before I could resume playing again. Because I kind of felt like while Dota is fun and all, and it might last for a long while, I believe that sometime in the future I'll have ambitions to pursue maybe some higher degree of education in some sort of field, and so I kind of felt that it was necessary to do it properly, which is kind of why I took a year off. But with that said, the year is almost over, and I guess after TI, I'll be back to playing full time when the rosters open up again. Yeah.
So officially not coming up on a major. You have to wait till after the international.
Yeah, unfortunately the major in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of coincides with my exam / graduation, so I probably cannot attend that one.
It would be a shame to do poorly on the final exams of your high school career because you're trying to rush into a team. That makes sense.
That kind of nullifies everything I worked for the previous year, so I probably won't do that. So.
Absolutely. Now it's interesting to me because I've followed you as a player obviously since Sad Boys, which is where you really made your big debut in the support role of all places. You've since become known for your carry, your prowess in the carry position, especially in the off lane for Team Secret before you stepped away from school. Tell me a little bit about your change of heart there, because when you were with Sad Boys, I remember hearing a few interviews with you where you actually said, professional Dota is great. I know that I'm good at it, but I don't know if it's something that I want to do long term. What made you change your mind and decide to step back into things?
Well, to be honest, it's probably not that honorable of a decision. Maybe people expect me to say, I love the game, my fans, and I can't wait to get back to playing. But realistically, while I've been away from Dota, I've kind of gained another perspective on things, perhaps the more regular perspective on day-to-day life, and it's kind of just a super good opportunity for me to be able to play Dota. While I might not think playing Dota is the most fun thing in the world, it's still an opportunity that is too good to pass up on, I believe. I can get so far ahead in life, I guess you can call it, by playing Dota for a couple of years. So that's going to be my, I guess, gateway to, I'm not sure what to call it. I think I'll just get ahead in life if I continue to play Dota.
Perhaps you think there's some stability to be found early in your life by earning $12 million at the next international.
Definitely. I mean, financial stability is definitely part of it. I think if you ask any young student that wants to go to college and, do you want to be financially independent? Sure. I mean, you'll be delighted. And the same goes for me, I guess. If I decide to pursue further education after I finish my Dota career, I'll be in a very comfortable position. So, of course, that's desirable.
Yeah, as somebody who is currently buried in student loan debt, I can assure you that a little money going into university goes a long way. Now, let's talk a little bit about your return, because when you started with Sad Boys, you were a support. Now, talk to me a little bit about that decision initially. Did you know that you wanted to be a carry eventually, and there was just an opening in Sad Boys, or talk to me a little bit about that decision?
I've always seen myself as a very adaptable player. I don't think I've ever had difficulties adapting to any of the heroes or the roles I've played. It comes kind of natural to me. So in that sense, playing support was what was needed on Sad Boys on that roster, because that was basically the slot that was open for me. So while I hadn't played 4 previously, I stepped into the position, and then playing with Peter, we found a good way to work together, and I kind of developed my... that's another thing too. I kind of developed my own kind of support role on that team, and then later on in EG, I was playing the very, I guess what do you call it? The greedy support type.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, where you get a lot of farm, and so you have a bigger impact. Sure.
Yeah, so I was kind of, I guess, kind of pioneered that role along with Aoi on, what was it, C9 back then? Mm-hmm. So for me, it kind of came natural to step into that role. And I think some of my, I guess, natural instincts or talents for Dota, which comes from, finding farm on the map and so on, that I had from playing offlane or from playing carry earlier, kind of carried over to that support role pretty well. So it worked out. It worked out for me. Yeah.
And then, of course, you made the transition from the 4 over at EG to the 2, arguably. Let's call it a 2.5, because when you did play with Team Secret, you played offlaners, but you tended to play, for example, Bristleback, who is an offlaner only in the sense that he survives and then becomes a monster later on. Was that just sort of a stopgap for you? Or are we going to see you in more of a 1 or a 2 role moving forward? Because it seems like you talked about your instincts about finding farm and playing that carry role. That seems to be more where you're predisposed.
Yeah, I think my strengths as a player don't really lie in the laning phase, one-on-one ability, and all that kind of stuff. I think my abilities and what makes me good as a player comes from other stuff, which is pretty much applicable to all roles except for the mid role, I think. So I think I could play anything except mid. I'd have to practice a lot, and even then, I think there are probably a lot of players that are better than me in the mid role, just because that's what they become good at.
Well, technically, if you wanted to come back into the meta now, you'd only have to know Invoker, OD, and Windranger, and you'd be set. I mean,
I guess so, but those are probably 3 of the least played heroes on my account. So I'd have to do a lot of work if I wanted to play mid. I'd much prefer to play another role. But with that said, I can probably play 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, excluding mid. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you there, if I may be so bold, is you'd even be willing to step into the 4 or 5 role.
Yeah, I think 5 role, especially, I'm kind of eager to play if the opportunity is provided, because I think the 5 role is so important. You have a lot of responsibility that you don't really have in other roles. So it's exciting and it's new. It's something I haven't really done before. So it'd be fun to try at least.
It's certainly a challenging proposition to have no armor, no damage, and yet your team fight ult or in the case of Witch Doctor, you throw the right cask, you can practically win a team fight. I could certainly see how there's a challenge there. Now you're sitting out Manila. It sounds like you're also sitting out the International. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is that the talent market for Dota right now seems to be we grab a player, we invest in them, and then we gear up for the major season, like EG did with Arteezy when they decided to drop Owie. When it comes to the teams that you're looking at, are you looking to make a long-term investment, or are you trying to sort of weigh your options and figure out where you fit in competitive Dota these days?
I mean, it's kind of hard for me to look at where I could fit in what team, because right now all the rosters are sort of stable, and while I potentially could replace a player here and there, it's not really my decision to make. Personally, I feel like I could probably replace a lot of players on teams, but perhaps that'll come after TI. As for now, things are probably going to stay as they are until the next roster window is open. Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. Zai believes he could replace Arteezy. Arteezy, if you want to come on the show and respond, I kid, of course. So obviously, I can imagine that it's been difficult approaching teams, or at least being approached by teams who do have a roster sort of in mind for the International already. How do you get ready for that period in your career when you do come back? Are you just spamming pubs? Are you talking to different teams? What's your day-to-day look like after school is done while you wait to make your return to a team?
I mean, as for now, I haven't been focusing on Dota that much, since I've kind of realized that I won't be playing up until, I guess, after TI or leading up to TI. So my focus hasn't really been on Dota. But with that said, I don't think my abilities have diminished in any way. I mean, I played some pubs here and there. And, I mean, as I said before, most of my abilities don't come from being able to, not miss a CS or outlay my opponent, all that kind of stuff. I think once you reach the higher tiers of the game, a lot of it is mental and so on. But as for talking to people, I guess that's sort of what I've been doing, keeping track on what's happening in the scene. I still talk occasionally to a lot of players in the scene, which I'm good friends with. So I mean, you can't really sit here and discuss what's going to happen after TI, but I'm definitely, I guess, putting myself out there in that way. And I think that once the roster window is open, I'll be a pretty I said desirable player on the market, I guess. A solid free agent. So I don't think I'm gonna have any difficulties finding a team in that sense. Yeah.
Now, let me put on my journalist cap. What teams have approached you?
I mean, as for now, like some teams have asked if I was ready to play after the China major, but as I kind of explained, I won't be able to attend the Manila major, and if I don't play there, they're gonna have to field another player, and then they're gonna have to boot the player if they want to play with me at TI, which is kind of a weird situation to be in if you're a team. So I think as for now, while some people have talked to me, when I've explained my delicate situation, they've kind of backed away because it's like while I want to play and while I might want to force myself onto a team, it's kind of an asshole move to do for the sixth guy. So it's probably not going to be very likely that something like that will happen.
I can imagine how awkward that would be. You sitting on the bench and the rest of the team going to a major and basically saying, "Don't screw up. We already have your replacement lined up."
Yeah.
So I can only imagine that.
It's a really unfair situation to put a guy in, which is probably why it won't happen. And then I'll just have to wait another month or so before I get to playing again, which isn't that bad for me. So.
Sure. You got to save yourself a little. At least right now, you aren't taking your tests and then also worrying about having to put together a winning lineup and figuring out 6.87 ahead of Manila. I mean, that's got to be nice.
It is nice, and I get to focus on what I set out to do this year. So, while I mean, as I said, while I'm eager to play, I kind of have to stop myself to not let it get in the way of school, which was my primary goal for this year. So. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you're accomplishing that as you set out to do. Now, one thing I do want to ask about is that you have sort of conspicuously, I mean, when the roster for EG came out and they saw that Zai was a sub, I think that probably turned a few heads. And since you're working on school, a lot of people have sort of forgotten about it. I didn't. I do have to ask, what was the idea behind that decision to have you on the roster while, I mean, for all intents and purposes, allowing you to finish your school? So there was really no intent to play you in that capacity. Now, was there?
No, I mean the idea was never that I was going to play or replace a member on EG. It was sort of just a way of, I guess, maintaining my name on the scene in a sense. So while I'm gone for a year, I'll have my name on a roster list, which is beneficial, I guess. But no, as you said, there was never any plans of me actually playing. It was just more of for the sake of convenience and. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play any of the online games. I was kind of eager to play some of the Dota Pit qualifiers, but EG didn't want to let me play. Which was
bastards.
Sad. Yeah.
Well, it has to be said, it's notable that you were chosen in place of EG's most prolific sub, Mason. I'm sorry.
I mean, Mason had his own. Had his own couple of projects, so he wasn't really able to sit on the roster anyway, I think.
Well, and it has to be said that the time that he spent with EG, while he certainly played Weaver, Marana almost exclusively. I mean, they got some mileage out of that. You guys certainly got some mileage out of that. Well, with you being on EG specifically, it's just interesting. Is there any plan that you can enlighten us to of being on EG somewhere down the future? Were they literally just throwing you a bone as a former player?
I mean, maybe kind of both. I mean, as I said, there wasn't really any long-term goal of having me on as a sub. I think the substitute position for Dota teams is super weird. I'm not really sure why. I mean, I can understand why Valve put it there, but I doubt there's been any use of it so far for official purposes. I mean, it's not like you create a team and then you have your sixth guy come to the major and practices with the team. You don't rotate your substitute in to play with the team to keep the practice up. It's just sort of a weird position, and I think a player like me who's actually not actively playing is probably the perfect fit for the sub position, because I think realistically it's just useless, and it's pretty much just a chance to get your name on a stable team or a solid team. So in that sense, me just being on AG was, as I said before, just an opportunity to maintain my name on the scene.
There you go. Yeah, it's certainly not a matter of, you've got the guy on the bench in sweats, and in the middle of the game you call him into the game.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird why they chose to have it.
It has to be.
There's even 2 substitute positions. I think.
There are 2?
I think there's 2 slots even, which makes it even more
Weirder.
strange.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a place for Mason on EG after all. Anyway, so moving forward, obviously I want to talk about the metagame a little bit, since you have obviously an extremely educated opinion of picks in Dota and the meta as it stands. 6.86, a lot of people felt that it was sort of a weird patch. It developed into sort of this, you could pick a fighting lineup, but the team with Nature's Prophet and Invoker who could push you even after you lose a couple people in a fight, probably had the edge overall. It seemed like the meta really shifted in terms of pushing long-term pressure, things like that in the multiple lanes, except for poor Arteezy's Naga Siren. What changes would you like to see made in 6.87? Is there anything in particular that you thought was a little OP this patch that you'd like to see changed? And why is it Outworld Devourer?
I mean, personally, I don't think Odie's that bad.
You don't think so?
If you pair him with Omni, he's a real... It's very annoying if you pair him with Omni, but I mean, I haven't played professional games, so I'm sure the hero is super annoying in officials. But as for things that are annoying in official games, I think the what do you call it? The resurgence of big offlane teamfighter heroes, like Tide, Beastmaster, and all these kind of heroes. I think they're mostly viable because of Iron Talon and the newly implemented creep camp next to the offlane lane, which I think has a lot of consequences on how the game is played. Because when you're able to pick these heroes that can just sit there for a couple of minutes and then they get their level 6 and then they have their huge ultimate that has a big impact on teamfights and such, it kind of enables you to pick certain lineups that work well together, sort of like the big team fighting lineup you were talking about. And I think that's mostly because Iron Talon is as strong as it is, and you don't really have to pick super strong offlaners. You can just kind of put whatever in the offlane and hope he gets some levels in the jungle if his lane is too bad. And then, as you said with Freon and Evoker, I think a natural effect or a natural consequence of people picking teamfight stuff is that the opposing team can either pick equal or better teamfights, or they just decide to split push. Because I think inherently teamfight heroes don't have that much gank potential, which kind of enables heroes such as Freon and Invoker and all that kind of stuff to be picked. So I guess my view of it is that it all boils down to Iron Talon, and that it kind of just enables these boring heroes that their mana could change the game and how it's played.
Do you think it's so bad that they need to nerf Iron Talon? I mean, because how many games have we all played where a Legion commander decides to go into the jungle with an Iron Talon and comes out just as worthless as you expected? Is it that impactful of an item that they need to make significant changes in the future to shift the meta away from where it is now?
I mean, I guess they put it in the game for a reason, and since they put it there, they're probably not going to be too happy if they have to remove it. But I still think it enables too many bad laners to get a lot out of the laning phase, which I think impacts the game in a pretty bad way. So maybe some, I guess, readjusting to the numbers or something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, Alliance was even running Lone Druid in the off lane with an Iron Talon, and he'd come out of the lane even after being tri-laned or heavily harassed, just as dangerous as ever. It has to be said, it's a big impact. What about the pool of mid lane heroes? Because it seems like we've moved away from sort of the tempo controlling mids, the Pucks, the Bat Riders, the heroes of that nature, and more towards the tempo controlling fours, which is why we see things like Enigma and Chen in the jungle. Is that good for? I mean, there's a lot of people making a lot of complaints about the meta right now because the game's shifted so dramatically. But what would you like to see changed about the meta in the future? Would you like to see more focus on mid lane tempo controllers and more of those true fours, or do you sort of like the idea of an almost 3.5 core lineup?
I think I definitely like the idea of having a more of a tempo controller in mid. I think it makes the games more exciting because, as you said right now, the mid lane is just another lane for two heroes to get farmed, pretty much. You don't really see any heroes kill each other in mid unless they get aid from their force. And it's just, like, realistically, it's just another lane for these heroes to find farm. And I think if we look back on previous patches and like the history of Dota, when you have your tempo controller in mid, it makes for more exciting games, which personally I would like to see. And it also, if you have a tempo controller in mid, it kind of changes how the offlane and the 4 role is played. So I definitely like to see, as you said, like a move away from the invokers, the ODs and the whatnots. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun watching a wet noodle fight, as they call them in League of Legends, of just two mid laners harassing each other. Team comes in, gets a gank on one. The other team comes in, gets a gank on other, and things end up ultimately equal despite all of that fighting. Yeah,
it's not that exciting.
No, it most certainly is not. And while I think that some of the late game team fights that we saw in Secret vs Liquid at the end of Shanghai were pretty exciting, it was almost. Again, I hate to invite the comparison because they're two completely different games, but it was almost League of Legends-esque how much farming happens in that first 15 to 20 minutes the way the patch is right now. And if you manage to really screw up royally, then Furion sort of takes advantage of that, but that's really the only inroad before teams hit the mid game. The question that I had for you is all of these picks are great, obviously, but it's how they're deployed that matters. After seeing the results at Shanghai, I don't know if you got to catch many of the games, but I'd love to hear your premature predictions for Manila while we're sitting way too far out to have any idea who's going to be good.
Jesus. I guess I'll just get general hopes for what's going to happen.
I wish for.
Yeah, I wish for the Chinese scene to become good again. I think, when the Chinese scene is not that good, the Western scene is just in lack of better words, it's just a circle jerk of playing the same way. And I think when you don't have these, like the Chinese scene that innovates new stuff to beat your scene, the game gets kind of stale, and you see pretty much all the teams playing the same manner. Like if you look back at, I guess TI3 is the optimal TI to look at. I think there was a ton of different playstyles, both from the American scene, from the Western, or from the European scene, the Russians, the Chinese. I think they all kind of had their own way to play. But as of now, since the Chinese scene has kind of been lackluster, they've I guess that's just another element that gets removed from the equation.
Well,
so
and eHome made it look like they had a new way to play when they won the MDL, and then they showed up and just bombed. And you're right, it sort of went back to everybody picking the same things and playing the same way all tournament.
It's not that exciting, and if you want to have good tournaments, I think people need to be innovative and figure out new ways to play the game, which perhaps isn't that easy to do in theory. And since I'm not playing and actually trying to figure out this stuff, I can just sit here and high horse that you should be better, you should be innovative, and so on. But I think it make for more exciting games and like better rivalries and the West versus the East and so on. If the Chinese scene got their stuff together. So I guess that's ultimately what I hope for at Manila.
I'll give you 2 more wishes before we close out with you. It's a genie. Your first wish is for China to get better. What are your other 2?
I hope EG gets far, I guess.
You are on that team after all. I mean,
I think they'll do well, even without my wishes. But I hope they'll do well. And one more.
You can wish for
I'd like
Pony.
to see-
That's allowed.
I'd like to see MVP do well again. I think it's fun to see. It's always fun to see MVP do well. From TI to the other majors to this one, it's just fun to see them play. And I think while we're speaking about being innovative, MVP is definitely up there. And they've been playing this super aggressive kind of play style that hasn't really been in favor for a lot of teams lately. And it's fun to see them succeed with it. So I hope MVP does well yet again.
Yeah, it was certainly fun to see them succeed, although I do have to admit, as a former StarCraft fan, it always gets a little uncomfortable when Koreans start doing well at an esport. Zai, thank you so much for joining us. Any final thoughts, any shout-outs before we close up shop?
I guess just persevere with me. It's barely 2 months until I'm back. And I'll have to endure my exams. I'll have to go through revision, but once it's over, I'll be back. Then I'll see everyone again. Yeah. So until then.
Well, good luck on your final, sir, and we're all looking forward to a speedy return. Zai, thank you so much for joining us this evening. For the rest of you, if you like the show, check out that follow button below, and also, if you're feeling particularly generous, check out the $4.99 subscription button down below. You'll get access to the .fire and .fan emotes, which are, of course, the harbingers of chaos in any welcome Twitch chat. Go ahead and check this out. If you want to see the video after the fact, check us out on youtube.com/daily.esports, over at Facebook, daily.esports, and on Twitter at .esports. Guys, thank you so much to our guests this evening, Dakota and Zai, for joining us. We'll see you guys next week, and for the love of God, play some more Dota.